What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to give you my 2024 SEC football projections heading into the 2024 college football season. So last week we completed our schedule preview and projected records for all the teams in the Power 4. Now we're going to give you our projected standings for every single Power 4 conference, and we're going to start with the SEC, show you what the standings look like based on our projected records for this conference, and not my official prediction, of course. These are projections based on how tough those schedules were for every single SEC team. So we're going to start from the bottom and work our way to the top. Remember, of course, no divisions in the SEC this year. So we start here at the bottom. So we got number 16, Vanderbilt here at number 16, projected to go 4-8, and then 0-8 here in the conference. No surprise here that Vanderbilt is projected to be the worst team in the SEC this year. It's not really just about their overall record here. It's really more about the schedule that they play. They do play Virginia Tech in the non-conference. That's the big non-conference game that they'll play in week number 1, but it really is about the SEC schedule. That's the reason why they're also projected to go 4-8. They do have a tough schedule in the SEC. They'll play Texas, Missouri, Alabama. They also have to play, also Tennessee and LSU. They don't have to play Georgia or Ole Miss, which I think is really good news because they used to play Ole Miss every year in that cross-division rivalry. So they avoid those two teams from, for making the schedule a little bit more tougher. But again, Vanderbilt is projected to be the worst team in the SEC, and they are projected to go 4-8 based on how tough their schedules are. And then Florida comes in here at number 15. They're projected to go 5-7 and then 2-6 here in the conference. Florida has a very tough schedule this year. They have the toughest schedule in the country, and they also have the toughest schedule in the SEC this year. You look at their non-conference, they're going to be playing three Power 4 teams in the non-conference. They'll play Miami and Florida State, both out of the ACC, and then they get UCF out of the Big 12. And then you look at their SEC schedule, they're going to be playing Tennessee and Georgia, and then, of course, LSU. Of course, they played those teams every year when the SEC was normal. But they're also going to be playing on the road at Texas, and they also play Ole Miss on their schedule. So, again, that is a very tough schedule in the SEC for Florida. It's kind of hard to tell how good Florida is actually going to be based off of where they were from last year as well. So, again, based on Florida's schedule, they are projected to go 5-7. And then Arkansas and Texas A&M are both here at number 13 and number 14, both projected to go 6-6. So they are both projected to go to a bowl game. I know they're tied here for number 13, and they do play in the regular season, obviously. But, the reason why Texas A&M ended up being ahead of Arkansas here was just because of both teams' schedules. Texas A&M definitely has a more, easier schedule than Arkansas does. Arkansas, you look at this team, they are projected to go 6-6. They do have a tough schedule this year. They're going to be playing Oklahoma State in the non-conference on the road. That'll be very tricky, but it's really going to come down to their SEC schedule. They do have a tough SEC schedule, like it seems like every year now. And they're starting to play like some of the top teams in the SEC as well. So I think the good news about that schedule is that they don't have to play Alabama on the schedule, which is really kind of weird, to be honest, because they used to play Alabama every year. But Arkansas is projected to go to a bowl game based on how tough their schedule is at 6-6. And then Texas A&M here at number 13. They're also projected to go 6-6 and then 2-6 here in the conference. First-year head coach, obviously, for the Aggies. We don't know how good this team is actually going to be, but they have a tough non-conference game against Notre Dame on the schedule. The good news is they get that game at home against Notre Dame, but they have Texas on the schedule, of course, at the end of the year, and that's also a home game here for Texas A&M. So Texas A&M actually could do a lot better than that 6-6 projection, but again, with a first-year head coach, it's kind of hard to tell how good the Aggies will actually be. So they're here at number 13. In my projected standings, projected to go 6-6 based on how tough their schedule is. All right, number 12, we got South Carolina here at number 12, projected to go 6-6, and then also 2-6 here in the conference. What came down to the tiebreaker between the Aggies and the Gamecocks was that the South Carolina Gamecocks do play Texas A&M at home. So that's why South Carolina ended up being here at number 12 instead of Texas A&M here being at number 12. But South Carolina is also projected to go 6-6 based on how tough their schedule is. And they do have a tough schedule as well, but they do have a tough SEC schedule. They obviously got the non-conference game against Clemson this year. That obviously they do play that game every year. They will play that game on the road at Death Valley, so that'll be a very tough game there in the non-conference. Well, you look at South Carolina's SEC schedule, they'll play LSU and Ole Miss both on the schedule at home, and then they do play Oklahoma and Alabama both on the schedule as well. Those two games will be on the road, so a pretty tough schedule for South Carolina, but they are projected to make it to a bowl game just barely there at 6-6. And then Mississippi State comes in here at number 11. They're projected to go 5-7, and then 3-5 here in the conference. So you're probably wondering, why is Mississippi State ahead of South Carolina? Well, it's because they are projected to win more games in the SEC based on how tough their schedule is. Mississippi State also has a pretty tough schedule, though. They're going to be playing Arizona State out of the non-conference on the road, and they will play 4 tough road games in the SEC against Ole Miss, Tennessee, Texas, and Georgia. So again, Mississippi State has a pretty tough schedule this year. That's why you're seeing their projection at 5-7, and they do have, like I said, a very tough schedule in the SEC, and they also have a first-year head coach, just like Texas A&M does. And we don't know how good this team is actually going to be. So Mississippi State here at number 11, and then Kentucky and Auburn both here projected to go 7-5, and then Kentucky's projected to go 3-5, but Auburn 4-4. You look at Kentucky; they have a pretty tough schedule this year in the SEC, but not in the non-conference. They're going to be playing Louisville, obviously, but they get that game at home this year. And also, they have beaten Louisville in like 5 years already, so I think Kentucky will probably be favored in that game. And then you look at their SEC schedule. They're going to be playing Ole Miss on the road. They're going to be playing Texas on the road. They play Georgia at home this year, and they also play Tennessee on the road. So that's a pretty tough schedule in the SEC for Kentucky, but I think it will be enough to probably make it to a bowl game this year, and they are projected to go 7-5. And then Auburn comes in at number 9, just like I mentioned, at 7-5, and then projected to win 4 games in the SEC. They're going to be playing Oklahoma on the schedule. They're also going to be playing Alabama and Georgia on the schedule. And then in the non-conference, they play California in the non-conference out of the ACC, but they do get that game at home as well. So you look at Auburn's schedule, it's pretty tough having to play Georgia and Alabama every year, and they play both of those games on the road this year, so those will be very tough games for Auburn. That's why you're seeing the projection a little bit lower here for the Tigers this year, just because of how tough that schedule is. Again, when you got Georgia and Alabama both on the schedule. So Auburn here at number 9, and then Oklahoma comes in here at number 8. They're projected to go 8-4, and then 4-4 here in the conference. Oklahoma has a pretty tough schedule this year in their first year in the SEC. They're going to be playing Tennessee on the schedule. They're going to be playing Ole Miss, and they also do play Texas. Of course, they play Texas every single year because of the Red River rivalry. That's always a pretty good game there between those two teams. And then they also got to play, like I said, they have to play Alabama and LSU both there as well. They get Alabama at home, but they have to play on the road at Death Valley against LSU at the end of the year. So Oklahoma has a pretty tough schedule, but they'll be favored in some of their other games in the SEC at least. So that's how they're projected to go 8-4. But, not really projected to go 10-2 or 9-3 just because of how tough that schedule is. So Oklahoma is projected to go 8-4 and then 4-4 here in the conference. And then Tennessee comes in here at number 7. They're projected to go 9-3 and then 5-3 in the conference. Tennessee's schedule is not that horrible. I mean, it's a very tough schedule either way. They got to play NC State in the non-conference. That game will be in Charlotte this year, so that'll be a very interesting non-conference game. And then they do play Tennessee actually plays Alabama every single year on the schedule. I mean, there's no question about it. They're going to be playing Oklahoma on the road, and they also do play Georgia on the road. So those are probably going to be their 3 toughest games there on the schedule. But, they are projected to go 9-3. Again, their schedule is not that horrible, so that's why you're seeing their projection at about 9-3 and then 5-3 here in the conference. So, all right, let's move on to number 6 now. We got Missouri here at number 6. They're also projected to go 9-3 and then 5-3 here in the conference. And their schedule is pretty easy. That's the reason why Missouri ended up being ahead of Tennessee, even though they do not play in the regular season. Now, Missouri does play Boston College out of the non-conference, but that's probably not going to be a really tough game there for Missouri. They do get that game at home in the non-conference, and they probably should be favored in that game by at least a touchdown. But you just look at their schedule in the SEC. They don't have to play Texas. They don't have to play Ole Miss. They don't have to play Georgia. They don't have to play Tennessee. And they also don't have to play LSU. Now, they're going to be playing Alabama on the road, road. That's probably going to be their toughest road game. But again, the Tigers with a pretty favorable schedule this year. That's why you're seeing the projection so high for this team at 9-3 and then 5-3 here in the conference. So watch out for the Missouri Tigers. They could be really good this year. And then we actually have a three-way tie here for number 3. We got Ole Miss, Alabama, and LSU all projected to go 10-2 this year. You look at Ole Miss, their schedule is a little bit tough. They're going to be playing Wake Forest in the non-conference on the road, but I think Ole Miss will probably be favored in that game, probably by about a touchdown. And then you look at their SEC schedule. They're going to be playing LSU on the road. The good news is they don't have to play Alabama on the schedule, but they also got Georgia on the road. So those are going to be very tough road games there for Ole Miss. Those are 2 games that they could probably lose to. And then you got the non-conference game against Wake Forest. Like I mentioned, Ole Miss probably will be favored in that game by about a touchdown, but either way, I think this Ole Miss team has a chance to be pretty good this year. They got Jackson Dart back at quarterback and also the offensive side of the football. It should be pretty good as well. So Ole Miss is projected to go 10-2. And then Alabama comes in here at number 4. They're also projected to go 10-2 based on how tough their schedule is. So yeah, Alabama has a pretty tough schedule. It's not really just about the non-conference schedule. They do play Wisconsin in the non-conference on the road. That'll be a tricky game there, but they do have to play Georgia. The good news is they get Georgia at home this year, but they have to play on the road at LSU, on the road at Tennessee, and then on the road as well at Oklahoma. So those are going to be very tough games there for Alabama. The good news is they don't have to play Texas on the schedule at least, so that does make the schedule, that keeps the schedule for me more tougher for the Crimson Tide, but they are projected to go 10-2, and then LSU comes in here at number 3. LSU has a couple of non-conference games that are going to be probably challenging for the Tigers. They're going to be playing USC in Las Vegas to start out the year. Then they play UCLA at home, which I think LSU will be favored in that game because they're playing at home in Death Valley. But they don't have to play Texas. They don't have to play Georgia. But they also don't have to play Missouri and also maybe Tennessee as well. So that's the good news there for this LSU team. But they have to play Alabama. They do play Alabama every year. They will get that game at home. And they play Ole Miss as well. So they get 2 of those games at home this year. So that's the good news there for LSU. That's why their projection is so high here at 10-2. And then Texas comes in here at number 2. They're projected to go 11-1 and then 7-1 here in the conference. This will be their first year, of course, in the SEC. Texas's schedule is not that horrible, but they do have a non-conference game on the road at Michigan in week number 2. But I think Texas probably will be favored in that game just because they have the more talented roster, because Michigan has a lot of roster turnover. Now, Texas does have to play, like I said, Georgia on the schedule. That game will be at home for them this year. But they also have to play Oklahoma every single year as well. Again, I just talked about the Red River rivalry. That's always a really classic game between those 2 teams. But again, Texas, their schedule is not that horrible. That's why they're projected to go 11-1 and then 7-1 in the conference. And this probably should be a really talented Texas team either way. And then Georgia comes in here at the top at number 1. They are projected to go 11-1 and then 7-1 here in the conference. It really isn't just about the overall record for Georgia. It's more about the schedule. I mean, their schedule is not that horrible, but it is a tough schedule either way for Georgia. They got 3 tough road games in the SEC, but let's talk about their non-conference. They'll play Clemson in Atlanta. I think Georgia will be probably favored in that game. And then obviously you look at the SEC schedule. They'll play 3 tough road games in the SEC on the road. They're going to be playing at Alabama. They're going to be playing at Texas and then also at Ole Miss. Now I think Georgia will be favored against Ole Miss just because of that game, how it went from last year. Georgia obviously blew them out. So I think, Georgia probably will be, favored in that game. I forgot to mention that Ole Miss does play Georgia at home instead of playing in Athens. So Georgia does play Ole Miss on the road this year. But again, those are 3 tough road games there for Georgia. But I think they'll either way probably lose one of those road games. I don't really see them losing like all 3 of them, and maybe like both, maybe like 2 of them as well. But I think Georgia is projected to go 11-1 just based off of their schedule. Again, their schedule is not really that horrible, but it is a tough schedule for this year for 2024 for sure. But either way, Georgia, I think, is clearly the favorite to win the SEC, and they're also projected to win the SEC as well, and also probably be projected to win the national championship this year. So these are my projections here for the SEC for 2024 based on how tough each and every single team's schedule was in the SEC. So let me guys know what you think about these projections here for the SEC for 2024. Again, these are not predictions. These are simply projections based based on how tough the schedules were. Let me know down in the comments below, do you agree or disagree with these standings? Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.